Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Casen.
This is Kellan, and it's good to be here. I'm dragging. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. You know how it goes. Yeah, we are recording on a Wednesday. The midweek slump. You know how that goes.
Yeah, ordinarily I
Um,
feel like it's me at times who's had to wait on you to join. Casen had to wait on me today. Just letting everybody else know, I'm kind of dragging. Today is probably the longest day of work I could possibly have that doesn't involve any kind of events. If you know what I do in the world of athletics, so just
yeah,
just happy to be here. But I told Casen, and I'll just apologize to listeners ahead of time if I don't seem all the way here. But I did do research prior to today and write some things down. So
yeah. Um, yeah. So we have a pretty big, slate of football to talk about. I definitely don't want to talk about football. If you watch Monday Night Football, you are fully aware of why I don't want to talk about football.
well, I
No,
am
no,
I
you know,
am
you know what
fully
I mean.
aware of
You know
that,
what
and
I
I feel
mean.
like
Um,
I absolutely we need to go into that. But I just to tell some folks like we have the exact same lineup as last week. I sent Casen
I It'll
almost so
probably be the same for a while. Yeah, we'll probably get into some other stuff later, but for the time being, yeah, we're definitely going to be probably focusing on
at
football
least
for a
chugging
while.
through the rest of September because we're about to leave the month of September here in another week or so, where we get into what is by far the best sports month that exists in October, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not even close. And we will definitely have some other things on the slate, but until then, we are definitely going to get into the NFL slate from this past week. We're going to talk about college football. I think there's going to be more stories really to talk about in the coming weeks here. And then, of course, we got to do of the weeks. I have a few. I write a few down. Absolutely wrote a few down, and then we're going to talk about Ahsoka again because I began my day early this morning in
Yeah,
watching that, not anticipating this entire Wednesday was going to be
yeah, yeah,
what it ended up. But it's all good, all good.
yeah,
Mission accomplished and everything I had to do
yeah,
today. And it's one of those pat yourself on the back. And so here we are.
yeah. Well, I wanted to at least open the show because since I had talked about it before, I wanted to at least open the show wearing my Marcia So jersey that I got. Um, it's the gold, like it's, I don't know if you can really tell. It is like super sparkly.
Yeah, it's like
It's
sequin.
it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
It is the
it's
most ostentatious thing I own, and it is amazing.
I do like it. It's heralding where we're headed in terms of the hockey season. I'm looking forward to that. I will say that wait, how new is it? Is it like brand new?
I just got it. Yeah.
Nice. So you're ready for the season. You're a man
Yeah.
after my own heart because I too am waiting for hockey season. I will say that uh that those are not really as obnoxious as like say the Steelers Bumblebee jerseys were or some other of the
Yeah.
most fantastic jerseys in all of sports. But I guess if that's the Knights version of that, it checks out.
Yeah. All right, I will go ahead and
All righty.
take this off real quick.
He's literally taking the jersey off. I was gonna say you could just leave it on. My man did a whole switch to a Cleveland
All right.
Browns get up. And
Um
yeah.
yeah, I am wearing the jersey that Nick Chubb was wearing when his knee was exploded into a million
Oh,
pieces.
oh,
Um
why'd you have to say it
so
like that?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that is one of the
I
games
mean
I wanted to
we might as well just start with that, I guess.
let's start with that because the implications of that have bled into today in the NFL. Today, as in Wednesday, when we're recording this, in that I will just say what the news is, and we can get into the game and what the reaction has been. But Kareem Hunt is going to be a Cleveland Brown again, signing a 1-year, $4 million deal, I believe, today.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
obvious response to the
Yeah.
fact that Nick Chubb's I would say career, I almost said career season is over. I won't say career. He's not career over.
I
Career threatening.
I will be fully open and like mentally honest with you. This is his second knee, like complete knee destruction on the same knee.
On the
I
same
would
knee.
be
I didn't realize that.
he
Wow.
tore every ligament and had a complete reconstruction on that same knee in 2015
Wow.
when he was in college. So yeah, I am mentally preparing for the worst case and hoping he can come back But if he comes back as the same Nick Chubb, I don't know how. I don't know how.
I will be honest with you and the listeners. I still have not seen the actual full replay. I've seen the screenshot. That's all I need to see.
Yeah.
Immediately, when the internet immediately went to a place of, hey, Nick Chubb just got Willis McGaheed, I was like, oh my goodness. If you know, same thing happened where the knee just went the other direction. It is gruesome. I would say don't look it up. You don't need to see what happened to know what happened.
Yeah, Joe Buck said on the broadcast, we're not going to show the replay, but it was almost worse because while he was saying that, they were showing it in the stadium formerly known as Heinz Field,
Yeah,
and
I'd noticed that.
the fans were like audibly like gasping, and they were like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And so that was almost worse because you could see obviously Steeler fans like recognizing the context of that or the severity of the injury.
I mean,
like you're like, oh my gosh,
you never
like,
want to see that for anyone. My Lord. And so that was probably the story of the game if it wasn't for just the absolute Fire Canada chance that happened. The Steelers defense is the only reason the Steelers won that game. I will go ahead and just say that. I saw a stat today that says that the Steelers lead the league by a pretty significant amount, by 4 or 5, 3 in 3 and outs. I'm like, yeah, I know we do. Like, that's a stat that I know is supposed to be you plaster up there to actually say, hey, this guy should potentially lose his job in Matt Canada. But I thought it was just so egregious. It's almost like the organization is trying to make the fans hate it right now. I don't understand. Like, there's been situations with our offensive coordinator and everyone calling for their job in the past before, like people like Todd Haley and just that was probably that's the most extreme example. But there hasn't really been a great OC. And then I think Randy Fichtner was in there as well. There hasn't been a great OC in Pittsburgh since Bruce Arians left. Okay, all those years ago. Now, obviously, you go from Ken Wannstedt to Bruce Arians. We're talking about legendary coaches, especially with Bruce. But you can't replace a person like that. But this time, it's almost like Tomlin is actively trying to upset the fans and upset the stakeholders of the organization. It's like, do you realize how bad it looks when you don't have any offensive progress whatsoever? We have a young quarterback who badly needs a better offensive mind, and you're all but saying to the fans, like, yeah, we don't care what you think. It's like, okay, well then if you don't care and no one in the organization cares, maybe we shouldn't either. Until something actually changes, then I don't care either, Mike Tomlin. I don't care.
I can't even possibly imagine
like
that Pickens is okay with that Pickett's okay with that. Like, they have to be like, what are we doing here? Like, we want out. Like, we don't want to be here.
George Pickens if George Pickens was like a 3 or 4 year receiver, like veteran, he would have probably already like spoken very publicly about some stuff that's happened. The only reason why not is because he can't yet, because he hasn't been in the league that long. It's like you don't have that sway, but he's clearly visibly frustrated. And when you have his talent, it's like, yeah, it's amazing what happens when you target him literally at all. I don't know. I don't want to, but I needed to say my piece for the Steelers fans on here. Props to all of you that chanted Fire Canada. I applaud you all that did that to where you could literally hear it on the broadcast. I guess I do want to ask you, though, that's the Steelers situation. I don't think the Steelers did anything overly phenomenal to win the game, to be honest with you. The defense is solid. We know that. I think the real story is the Browns, to be honest. I don't think the Browns are a bad team, but I do think they were dealt probably the worst blow they could possibly have had, minus maybe Myles Garrett.
So I mean, there's ways to So obviously losing Nick Chubb for the season, and we'll address it next year. But who knows what Nick Chubb comes back at, what level he comes back at later. But it's just, I think that the loss of Nick Chubb, I think, will be more significant in the locker room than on the field. Like, we went and got Kareem Hunt. I mean, we'll probably be able to sort of make up what we're missing in the running game as much as possible. But Nick Chubb is the heart and soul of the team. Like, it just flat out, he is, there's the joke of he's Batman. He's the quietest, hardest working dude on the team that just shows, like, he just clocks in, clocks out, does what he needs to do. And I mean, you've seen the videos of him, like squatting like 1,000 pounds. Like, he's a monster. So I losing somebody with that amount of dedication and work ethic that quite honestly is basically mute. I mean, he's somebody that anybody wants on their team, and
Yeah.
losing him in the locker room is just devastating.
Do you think Deshaun Watson is cooked? That's my other question today.
Yeah, so that's the other point of
Are the Browns cooked because he's cooked? Because I think he's
we
cooked.
went out and we traded a lot of draft picks to get him, and we paid him a lot of money, and he looks pretty much like the worst quarterback in the league right now. And
he's down there. There are other quarterbacks that we'll bring up.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's not a very long there is not going to be a significantly more amount of time granted to him to be able to figure it out.
You know,
the window of like shaking the rust off is like basically gone, and he has to be significantly better.
Yeah, I would just say that my rebuttal is that I'm not trying to kind of poke fun and or like make light of a situation of saying just because I root for an opposing team within the division, division rival, whatever you want to say. I am more saying that I would feel that way if I felt like the Steelers had figured our quarterback situation out, but I just kind of expressed how, until potentially he gets another offensive mind, I think Kenny's going to be average to bad. So yeah, that also I wanted to make sure I said today.
Yeah, I mean, basically our teams are in the same spot. Like
they are.
Our defenses are going to be carrying our really mediocre offenses for the season, and that's just how it's going to be.
That is.
Monday night's game. I remember it's about every Steeler game. Like both for the last several years, like both offenses are completely inept and are negated by the defenses. Like the last couple of years have been that way anyway.
And then if you can get a few defensive touchdowns, which usually the Steelers can, that's your best bet.
Yeah, that's literally been, I think, how the Steelers have won the last couple of times is just like TJ gets a strip sack or something, and that's usually how the game goes.
I will say this though, that it is kind of amazing that the unbeaten streak that the Steelers have at home in Monday Night Football, my entire and your entire life remains. That's a real stat. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not lost a home Monday Night Football game since 1991, which is wild. For point of reference, if you don't know, I was born in 94. You were 96, right, Casen?
Yeah.
So,
and that's well before the stadium was even built. Yeah. So it goes all the way back to Three Rivers. So
I mean, that was almost just an era of difference, even. So like well over 30 years ago. So anyway, not just talking about
is that all of, I mean, is that like the entirety of Monday Night Football? I don't know when that started, but that feels like
I want to say Monday Night Football began in the 80s. That's something maybe that you can clock in with us here in a second, but it's definitely not all of it. It's the majority, obviously, of the Steelers' appearances in it, since the organization has played in them. But
it's been
your team played in the very first
70s.
Yeah,
the 70s, but
there's the Jets and the Browns.
That's right.
First
that's
one, I'm pretty sure.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway,
but definitely most of it.
Away from our game, there wasn't really any other surprise in the NFL this week. I guess the closest thing to a surprise that I kind of was that the Atlanta Falcons pulled it out against the Packers. That's probably every other result was about what I kind of expected. The Seahawks.
I would sort of disagree. I would say it was more of a surprise of how they happened. Mm-hmm. Like, sure. I mean, we'll just go here, I guess. I was, definitely not surprised the Chiefs beat the Jags, but that game was bad. Like the Chiefs scored 17 points, and I mean that game was 17-9. Like that was a really gross and ugly game from what are supposed to be two playoff contending teams.
Well, maybe they negate one another. I mean, I think it's very clear that the Chiefs have issues, and I think that's just very, very obvious. The Chiefs are probably not going to repeat as Super Bowl champions this year, and then they'll probably win it again next year. It's because that's typically how these kind of dynastic runs have gone. See. If I even say that like it's easy to do. But I think the real takeaway for me was the Jaguars are clearly for real. We know the Chiefs are. I just think that you have a Jaguars team that can play them to a standstill. But for game 2, I guess I'm not surprised that game would be ugly simply because, like I said, they kind of potentially would cancel each other out there. Let's see. The other one I wanted to talk about was the fact that it looked for about for a half of football in there, the Giants were just right back to being awful. That was another thing that was kind of amazing. They had gone all these scoreless quarters, and then finally they kind of woke up against the Cardinals and won.
That was very weird. That was very odd that they were outscored. I think it was like 60-0 or something, and then they eventually were able to score. And that's I don't know if that was more of the Giants waking up or the Cardinals being like, oh wait, we're supposed to be losing because we want to get Caleb Williams.
But it's funny because, right, and the Giants scored all 31 points to beat the Cardinals in the second half. So, yeah, I mean, you just find that interesting.
Very odd.
The other one I wanted to talk about was, are the Cowboys for real? That's a real question I have. It's week 2, I know, but are the Cowboys very much for real? Because I think they very well could be.
I think that they could be, but we've been down this road before. I mean, they can win the September championship every year, but we'll have to see how October and November goes.
Yeah, even on years where you really don't expect them to, like when they lose their starting quarterback for like the first month of the year, and then Cooper Rush comes in a year ago and they still like look good, and then they bomb out spectacularly.
I mean that defense is great. I mean, Micah Parsons might be the best football player on the planet. I mean,
right now,
I mean, they definitely have the potential. It's just their issue has always been consistency and staying this good the entire season. So we'll see.
I also want to acknowledge that simply because since we dogged them last week, the Bills beat the Raiders 38-10. That in no way was that surprising. I told you that was going to happen. I'm like, they're gonna beat the Raiders. The Raiders suck.
They needed a get right game and they got it, and so that. I mean, at least as far as the vibes in the locker room, hopefully that sort of fixes any issues. But again, I mean, just something to keep an eye out.
The second they have a close loss against the divisional opponent, it is right back to the world is on fire. Trust me, iron's in the fire. It is like, we lost another game.
I mean,
they're going to lose another game. But
the Raiders look like absolute garbage. So
So get ready for a really fun Sunday night football game this week between the Steelers and the Raiders. America.
Yeah. TJ's licking his chops at Jimmy G right now. He's like, oh boy.
Yeah, well, the Steelers offense will look bad even against the Raiders. So I digress. And the other thing we have to talk about is the fact that the Bengals are 0-2 and Burrow looks legitimately bad. We need to talk about that because that's our division, bro.
I mean, I don't think anyone really predicted this. I really don't understand how this quite got to be on the surface or on the how it got to be quite this bad. I don't think that we know for sure Joe Burrow's status for Sunday, but we know that he's been playing through an injury, and that's hugely a reason for this, is that he's definitely not comfortable anymore. He's definitely playing through
at least right now,
he's definitely playing through something he probably shouldn't be.
And the weird thing is, I know I sent you a TikTok or message or two about people who are saying, could this be a situation where the Bengals completely messed this situation up? I would say, we don't know that yet. I think, a couple of weeks in it is one thing, but one thing is really strange is if you're Joe Burrow and you're not totally healthy, why are you playing right now? Like
you just signed your deal. Like,
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, if I just signed a deal, but I knew I wasn't going to be healthy until maybe week 3, the reason I say that is because we would dog him if for the lack of competitiveness, but they're probably going to be okay for the first month of the season. And in other words, would a healthier backup in there with what they have be a better certainty for the team if it's like, look, I really cannot go this week. Okay.
I almost wonder
it's weird.
if they would have if their schedule wasn't their schedule. I mean, they opened the season against the Browns and the Ravens, and they were like, we need to win these 2 games to win the division. And
I can see that. I mean, and hey, look,
they just here they are 0-2 after losing 2 divisional games that they desperately needed. And I mean, if they want to have any chance, they should probably consider just sitting him for a week or 2 so that he can play the rest of the season.
So
because
next week
because you can't have Joe Burrow on one leg behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. I mean, that's just not going to be a good idea.
No, that's true. And regardless, they're still a ways away when it comes to their offensive line. But I will say this, their next few games here are a relatively easy stretch. They have the Rams at home on Monday Night Football. They have the Titans on the road, and then they have the Cardinals on the road. There's no easy weeks in the NFL, and there's no weeks off, but they don't have another divisional game, Casen, if I'm not mistaken here, until November when they play the Ravens again before they play the Steelers. But they have a very back heavy, like they don't get the Steelers until deep into the season, and when the Steelers are usually playing better. And I don't know. I think there's something to be said for, I think you're right. I think they really were like, look, let's put the best team out there to try and absolutely nail these first 2 games. But now it's like, have you done more damage than good? Because of what's happened these first 2 weeks. Credit to the Ravens too. I mean, they've been pretty much as mostly advertised so far this year. I don't think that'll stick, especially considering given their like decreasing depth because of their injuries. And, Lord forbid Lamar gets another one. That's another huge.
They definitely seem to be what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, so. At least so far to start the year. But the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about was this noise out of Chicago. Mainly just because Bears fans tend to be a very loud bunch. And because of Chicago being a big market and there's a lot of Bears fans.
I mean, Justin Fields definitely doesn't seem to be super happy with the play calling. He doesn't seem to be super happy with the scheme. I don't think he's super happy with the lack of offensive line, I'm sure. And I mean, it's definitely getting to be a very toxic situation, and it just kind of definitely seems to be very reminiscent of the Trubisky era. So I like Justin Fields. He definitely seems like he's trying and he's doing his best. It's just, he's another one of the kids that gets sent to a really bad situation, and they just don't know what to do with him.
No, and I'll say this, barring now, like just without knowing or necessarily having to get into the news that has come out about the Bears, since literally today, as in Wednesday, the story of just the things that Justin Fields was going through and just his play on the field up to today was really the story. What I will say, speaking just on Justin Fields, is I'm not so convinced that he would be great elsewhere. Like, there are a lot of things mechanically. Like, I think it's easy to go up there and say I'm not getting the coaching, but it's also it's true. You are like almost at mercy to the situation you're in. And as I said last week, the Bears are a bottom 5 organization, and so I just worry immensely that
no, you're right. And I think that definitely that's probably honestly more true than more likely true than not.
Yeah,
because this opened up the whole Ohio State quarterback debate again. I mean, that people are saying, or I mean, based off of what he said, is that he didn't really have to work very hard to be good at Ohio State. I mean, they barely played anybody that was difficult. Most of the defenses they played were not great. And I don't think that he really ever learned and developed his ability to progress through his reads. I mean, you just chuck it up and, Olave or Wilson would be open, and, it just that's that. So I think, not to move ahead, but I don't know entirely if that's the same situation with CJ, but at least for Justin, that definitely has kind of always been the concern with him, and that he doesn't seem to be 100 IQ quarterback.
I feel the need to apologize to the listeners ahead of time because, Casen and I have had to kind of do this show in between life things that are happening, but it's all good. We were going through the last of our NFL slates. I've wrapped up what I really wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if there were any games left that you really wanted to speak on prior to us kind of talking about the college week that was.
No, yeah, I think we generally talked about most of it. The only other thing was to just point out, we got the Giants and the 49ers on Thursday. Oof. The 49ers are favored by 10 points on that one, and that might be a little generous to the Giants.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
a double-digit line in an NFL game is a lot. So, we will check on that.
Just disrespectful.
Yeah, a little disrespectful.
They're professionals too. They get paid too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We can go ahead and go on to college.
So, getting into our college slate here, again, I feel like we have the same lineup as last week, but I really felt like, sort of how we said last week, Casen, there wasn't a whole lot of games that quite frankly are that were all that fantastic to write home about, which is why I think the battle in Boulder became such a focused on situation beyond just the fact that it had all the attention in the world at it. You agree, disagree with me?
There were games that shouldn't have been games that were games, like there were games that on paper were not going to be entertaining, and then they ended up being. But the coming into the week, the Pac-12 after dark matchup in Boulder, basically
the last year of it, the last year of Pac-12. But I will say this, I like you. I felt like, obviously the story in sports last week in American sports was obviously the Colorado head coach's comment about, sliding at Deion Sanders right before they were about to have college game day led to just a massive spectacle that, to be honest, had a little bit of a runaway train effect. Like, it got a little ridiculous. Like, all of that stuff was already going to happen. College game day, The Rock was there, and it got to the point where I think even to some degree, Coach Sanders, in a lot of ways, like, he knew all that stuff was going to happen. And I actually don't think he at any point said anything that was unfair, in response. I think he just kind of said, I don't know why he's coming at me, just all this stuff. I felt like PR-wise he handled it. It's just that coach made the kind of mistake of having that happen right before all of that stuff was going to happen for Colorado. And it just took on a life of its own.
I think, I don't know. He like afterwards sort of said that he wasn't trying to talk about Deion. He was more saying, like, in comparison, the way he runs his program, or at least what he does. He wasn't even saying versus or what Deion's doing. He was just saying, this is what I do.
True.
And so I don't know. I don't know what his intentions were, but it's more of the fact of, like, dude, like, why are you even like talk? Like, just like, don't even like try to say anything that could be spun out of control, because anything that you could say is going to be, a media nightmare,
almost like why'd you do that kind of thing. Like, and a lot of our listeners know what I do for a living. That's one of those things where I'm like, dude, why would you even invite the attention?
He sort of like tried to clarify pretty quickly that it was not in any way, shape, or form intended to be a shot at Deion.
True.
And so I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then the game started. and his players did not do him any favors.
That was a great way to put that. They didn't do him any favors in terms of their immediate action. But then again, if you are a situation where you've had to listen to your coach, this guy you trust, take it in the teeth from everyone in the media for like the last 72 hours, I don't care what you tell the guys, they are going to try to show up the other team as well as beat them.
Yeah.
And it really felt like they were riding on pure emotion up to and including the point where I'm like, dude, I can't have you guys doing this. Like you said, up until the game started, in a sense of a few of their actions, of course, Travis Hunter takes the hit. The other thing that, which the fallout from that has been disgusting. I don't necessarily even really want to get into it, but I will say this: Colorado State came to play. They truly did come to play. They wanted to be the first team to really make the storyline. Oh yeah, all that hype you guys had all this week. What if we beat you? And they almost did. Honestly, very well could have. And I just think that's really cool. I commend Colorado State's players for the performance primarily. They were going to be under the bright lights with all that attention, and they showed up. I mean,
I think that lost in all the Deion stuff of Colorado is also the I guess you could say the other narrative or the other storyline that Colorado State has also been really bad.
Yeah.
Like they've been, I mean, they came out and they got Jay Norvell for a reason because they were very bad.
Exactly.
And so between Colorado and Colorado State, football in Colorado was pretty boring for a couple years.
Give it 1 year and it's like the most watched game at 1 a.m. on the East Coast.
Exactly. I mean, and I mean, all I want to say, I mean, Jay Norvell was at Nevada before. He's a very good coach. I mean, from everything I've seen, he's seemingly like very good. I mean, he got Nevada turned around when he was there, and I think he has the potential to get done in Colorado State too. And so I'm hoping that this kind of builds up Colorado and Colorado State as a rivalry, and maybe both programs sort of can get elevated to another degree, because that'd be really fun to see. With I believe, with all of the stuff about realignment and whatnot, I think Colorado State, if they play their cards right, Colorado State could be could get a benefit and a boost out of this, and in terms of like branded tier.
I think so. And among all of the storylines that we're gonna see in the coming years in college sports and college football in general, for storylines like this to be generated, because not just because Deion's in it, but reactions, I guess, to what he's doing, it's gonna be fun. I mean, it's fun for us anyway.
I don't know. I mean, all I'm gonna say is it's just like, the media did what the media was gonna do, but like,
sure,
the media didn't make you ask Lil Wayne and Offset to show up,
right? I mean,
like you can't have Offset lead the team out and then have you almost lose to Colorado State. Like
the rumored list of people that obviously Colorado's going to go to Oregon. I think they go to Oregon. No, they host Oregon, I believe, this week. Do they?
I'm not.
Off the top of your head, you don't know, which is why I'm going to look it up for us. You got number 18, Colorado. They are going to Oregon and they will host USC. That was the distinction that I was going to make, and off the top of my head, I just couldn't remember. The reason I wanted to make that distinction is that you got a tough road game. It's Eugene. It's going to be a tough game. But then at home, the amount of celebrities that are rumored to be going to that USC Colorado game already, and we're 2 weeks out, is like hilarious.
Yeah. I'm sure Snoop's going to be there. I'm sure all the celebrity Trojan fans are going to be there, because I mean there is a pretty significant crossover between like Trojan fans and Deion's friends.
Yeah.
So
actually, the overlap is probably significant.
Because I mean, Deion, just being sort of around the media for a long time. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he probably has a house in LA. I'm sure he lived out there for a long time. He has a lot of celebrity fans, so
for sure,
and friends. So that'll be a spectacle when that time comes.
The only other real like shout out I wanted to give was, again, just because I'm biased with my alma maters and stuff. Syracuse beats Purdue. I was not able to watch really any of the game, but for you to beat a Big Ten school 2 years in a row, that's not a pushover. Purdue never is. It's cool. It's cool to see that, especially in a year where the ACC seemingly has shifted to where Florida State's the team to beat.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, Syracuse could make some noise. They're not going to win it or anything, probably, but
well, we came into the season kind of talking about, there was a lot of conversation about Dino's job, and just because it's been a little up and down, but off to a good start. I mean, this is how you want to start. So
it is how you want to start.
We'll see where this goes. They play Florida State, right? Syracuse. They play them this year.
I believe they'll usually play both Clemson and Florida State. Yes, they will play in 3 consecutive weeks after Army. They will play Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State in that order. The middle tier of that schedule always seemingly is tough for the Orange, but I did want to like kind of shift gears and talk about how we do get Florida and Clemson this week, Florida State and Clemson rather this weekend. That is an unranked Clemson team, at least as of now, against the number 4 Florida State team. I still think there should deservedly be a lot of hype around this game. Primarily to see how for real Florida State is. Like,
and to everybody's credit, that line is only Florida State -2.5.
Yeah.
It is in Clemson. And so a lot of people are thinking that it could be basically a toss-up at that point. I mean, Clemson, I think, is justifiably angry over sort of how their season started and how they've been sort of written off already, which and I think that there are definitely concerns about just how strong Florida State is, because we saw them go up to Chestnut Hill this weekend and they barely got out of there with a win over Boston College.
Very true.
Which that was a very emotional game. That was their bandana game.
Yes.
And which that's always a tough matchup for the opponent, because they always want to get up for that game. So
very, very good scheduling job on Boston College's part. I think that's actually one of the on the backstory of tragedy, obviously, go look a story up about the red bandana. But I think the red bandana thing, especially the uniforms they wear during that game, one of my favorite things in all sports. I mean, it is so cool looking. They scheduled a really tough opponent for that weekend and they almost won. So, hey, so pulling it back, I'm not sure what other games in the slate you really might want to talk about for this week.
I did at least want to talk about our shared alma mater, Bowling Green.
Sure.
We went up to Ann Arbor, and I mean, it definitely wasn't out of hand. I mean, it was a game.
No, it was not
pretty close. Which I don't know. I mean, we did see a pretty gruesome injury, or a scary injury to one of our defensive players, and thankfully, it seems like he's going to be okay, but he was sent to the University of Michigan Medical Center. So I don't know for sure how much I don't know if maybe Michigan agreed to sort of let up once that happened, because I don't think anybody really wanted to play after that. Because it kind of had the feeling like they were just, kind of running the ball, and then once it got to be 4th down, just punting it away and not really trying anymore. So I don't really know how much that was a factor in it. But I mean, on the surface level, I mean, it does sort of have to at least be addressed that Michigan has yet to really look good. I mean, JJ, I mean, trying hard or not, JJ McCarthy threw, it was 3 interceptions against us. So it's just I mean, that's definitely concerning.
I mean, you've never seen necessarily Michigan to be a team that'll put up Big 12 numbers every single week, quite even since they've really had their
they were supposed to be though.
Correct. But you have against Eastern Carolina 30 points, UNLV 35, and then BG 31. I mean, they're putting up about that range of points, and they kept their opponents that they should have anyways so far to single digits. They're about to get into Big Ten play, although it's going to be a while before they hit real tough Big Ten competition. But they do have some plays. They do have some like middle tier Big Ten teams that are gonna, I think, cause them a little bit of issues. I mean, I'm thinking of games at Minnesota. They got to play Michigan State at Michigan State. I mean, these are games
Well,
that, right, but that's always a rivalry game, and that's always significant. And then of course they got to go to Penn State, and then they're home against Ohio State. So I see some games in there. I see some games in there away from the big house that are going to give them issues if they're only putting 30 up and they're not looking good doing it.
yeah, I would say definitely they need to be that Penn State game. Definitely, I would say is a frightening matchup if you're Michigan. If you're Michigan, and then that Minnesota one is sort of just like we can't get upset here because Minnesota, I mean they're up and down sort of seemingly every week, but they're always one of those teams that could give you a really hard game. So
for sure. So that being said, would you like to do some of the weeks, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want to, we can. We always end up relating these back to it, but this kind of makeshift section of the show, this segment that we've kind of placed together, where Casen and I give you our of the weeks, and there's only one that's really like a set one, but I think over time, Casen, we're definitely going to have some that are some crazy ones and some funny ones. But I have two ones solidly this week. Do you have one to start us off? Because you usually have more than me.
Yeah, I will start off. I have one NFL one, and I want to just to sort of get this out of the way. I have a draft regret of the week.
Oh boy.
And that is 2023 first round, first overall pick, Bryce Young.
Oh man,
the Carolina Panthers
doing it to him.
I not so much even his play, but there was a story that came out this week that like apparently they had to completely eliminate QB sneak from their playbook because Bryce is too small to run it. And he's already questionable for next week with an ankle injury that he sustained in Monday Night Football. So
now, do you say that? Now, are you saying that like his fragility? I mean, he's 2 games.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of the fact of like you drafted a 5'8", 120-pound quarterback. This is what you're getting. Like,
right.
I'm not even really saying like you should have gotten CJ instead. I'm just saying like you drafted somebody who had serious size and like strength concerns. This is the bed that you have to lie in now.
Yeah. You also need to teach him to always line up behind the center, not the guard. That's the other thing that needs to be just said. That's where I thought that was going, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to completely dog him for that. I was like, oh, just pay attention, please.
I think that was more him just like not even he was just not even paying attention to what was going on.
It's like whatever. Yeah. He's literally looking, trying to get like a play, like or an audible, and it's like, hey, move over a little bit. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another. Well, okay. I have another one of these absolute dog moments of the week, and I have to look this up because I thought, you know what, that's one I'm going to try to keep going. And my apologies to you, Casen. I just need to look it up real quick. Right. So my absolute dog moment of the week does not go to an NFL player like Xavier Gipson last week. This week it goes to Harrison Mevis. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I do know who that is.
You know who that is? Yes.
Dog.
Absolute dog.
He is a thick boy.
He's a big guy, but he is the kicker currently for Mizzou football. And I'm going somewhere with all that talk as well, but he hit a 61-yarder essentially cold to win the game, to win their game. I'm trying to see. It was against KSU, correct?
It was against Kansas State. Yeah.
Yep. Kansas State. And that also kind of bleeds into my upset of the week, which across all football was that. It just, I figured, I was like, I'll just do the 1-2 punch here. Incredible football moment. You know, you showed up and you hit an incredible, you hit a kick that college kickers just don't make. Okay.
Yeah. To back up. Yeah. That should not have been a 61-yarder because it was closer than that. And then they ran out for the field goal and then just stood there, and they got a delay of game, which pushed it back to 61.
Pushed them back.
And
yeah, they made it harder.
What?
And if
so I was like, oh, so he's gonna miss this. Okay.
Yep.
Nope. But yeah, I mean that win over Kansas State, which I believe was 15 at the time, I think was their first ranked win in forever. There was a lot of talk coming in about Eli Drinkowitz and his job. And so that definitely probably saved him this season, because it's a huge marquee win. They needed that. Mizzou, I came into the SEC with Texas A&M in 2013, right? And they originally kind of had some success, and then they have been basically really at the bottom of the SEC since then. And they're just kind of waiting around in the waters.
To be honest with you, they're almost one of those teams where in this new realignment, like you'd almost like to see go back to the Big 12, because I almost think they'd be
I would agree they definitely should.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to win, they should. I mean, it obviously as a founding member, I don't think it would ever happen, but Vandy in the Big 12 would be fun and interesting. We'll see. I mean, I have maintained for years that Vanderbilt needs to get over themselves and actually go somewhere where they can win stuff, because they're a cool, they're such a cool brand of a university, with the color scheme and the logos and the mascot.
Nashville,
Yeah, and just being in the basement of the SEC forever,
but
just because you've been there for 100 years
that's just football. That's the thing. Vandy fans would be like, we're good at baseball. We've had other successes. I mean, I don't necessarily, I don't want to get too into that whole idea of let's trade for members. But back to Mizzou, I would say stick a pin in them, because they are 3-0 and they play Memphis, Vandy. They do have to play LSU middle of the year. They probably won't win that game, but they get they don't get the big dogs. They don't get Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida till the very end of the year. So I'm not saying what I'm saying is they're definitely a team where if they're sitting even at one loss by then, upset alert. I'm just saying.
I mean they could. I mean, they also seem in a position to be playoff or bowl eligible, which isn't a guarantee with their schedule a lot of times. So yeah, I mean Mizzou. I mean, I think for them a win is 7 or more wins. For sure.
You're next on of the week.
My next of the week. We did kind of talk about it, but it is my wake up. It's September of the week. Again, Michigan. I mean, they're not always the highest scoring offense in college football, but they've definitely sort of been sleepwalking through these games. I mean, obviously there's the conversations about Ohio State, and they started a little slow, but they just blew the doors off Western Kentucky on Saturday. Kyle McCord looked like he was, what he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. JJ McCarthy is returning. He was in the college football playoff, and he's not playing like he's supposed. He played like he played against TCU against us. I mean, he threw 3 balls to our defensive backs, and it's just you don't do that if you're a Big Ten quarterback. You don't have all these turnovers. You don't play this sloppy. And I don't know if that's because Harbaugh's gone. I don't know. I don't know if that'll all of a sudden get fixed once he's there. But I mean, from my understanding, he's there every day in practice. So I don't know why all of a sudden they forget how to play football on Saturday. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But they definitely sort of have not been mentally prepared to play.
Gotcha. I wanted to kind of shed a light on this just because I was pretty sure this was real, and then this whole thing happened, but I wanted to give a hey, you finally did something of the week, and this is my last one. Iowa scored 41 points. Just gonna throw it out there.
Yes.
Just gonna throw it out there.
They have now shoved the average up to 28 points, And so we are now in positive territory for Brian Ferentz's contract. Great news if you are Brian Ferentz's wallet. That's good. Well, us. We'll be keeping you posted about the status of his contractual obligated 24 points per game
for sure.
Average as we go.
For sure. And you might be able to shed light on this. There was a clip of him in like a post-game press conference, which was not real. I think it was AI generated or something like that.
I don't know. I don't think I saw that.
There was a soundbite of him that went kind of viral-ish, but I don't think it was real, which is why I quickly kind of pivoted once I kind of learned that today. I was like, okay, I still want to acknowledge that this happened and hey, that's cool for them. But at the same time, I didn't want to talk about because I was like, because where I went with it was soundbite of the week, and I need to do some research. And between now and next week, I think we'll do that. But either way,
yeah, not sure. I don't know. I didn't ever see that.
If you don't know what I'm referring to, then don't even worry about it because I think it got debunked. But regardless, that's where I went with this. I was like, oh, how many did this? 41-10 against Western. Okay, well,
yeah. So
there you go.
Which, again, that game was very close at halftime. I mean, they had like 7 points or something at halftime, and they managed to come out and just I don't know if that says more about Western or Iowa. We'll have to wait until they play other Big Ten competition to see where they fall on that spectrum.
And I guess Mid-American competition, just because I was trying to pull the schedule up here, but I mean, Western's kind of had a tough go of it. They had Syracuse. I want to say they had another big school last week, and now they had Iowa this week. It's like, okay, well, we're playing all of these tougher opponents. It's like, the other thing with the MAC. No, that was it. They had San Francisco, PA, Syracuse, and then Iowa. And then they have Toledo next week. So it's like, okay. I don't know.
Iowa has to go into Happy Valley this weekend. So yeah, we'll know how good Iowa is.
We sure will. So yeah, that's all the other weeks I had.
Yeah, my I did have I had one final of the week. And this is my please donate today to help get their electric turned back on because clearly they are not watching the games because they have lost all their electricity of the week. And this goes to the AP voters.
Wow. Okay. Okay, that's a lot. You need to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so they clearly do not have the money to keep their electric turned on because they're not watching the games on TV that they're voting on.
What are you referring to exactly?
Well, I mean the AP poll after everything we saw this week, we saw Georgia barely beat South Carolina. They remain number one. We saw Michigan barely beat us. They remain number two.
Sure.
I mean, we see Florida State barely win. They don't move. It's just like clearly they're not watching the good teams not play very well.
Yeah, I mean, you did have movers and shakers. I mean, Alabama's out of the top 10 in a long time. That's deserved after the whole USF thing, which by far would have been my upset of the week if that had happened. 100%. I've been like, oh, okay. So, I mean, I was actually in an environment of other fellow college football fans, kind of declaring Alabama not punting on the season, so to speak, during that game, and then of course they won it.
Yeah,
barely. But I just think that mentally, they could be a bit shot. But very funny of the week, I must say, Casen. It was very long, but I really do like that. Maybe here in the next coming weeks, as we start to get into some conference games, we'll start to flip around. They'll get some electricity back, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the when it comes to the non-conference schedule polls, they're basically unless you lose, it's the same as the preseason. Yeah, I mean, it's like just win your non-conference games, and you're not really going to be penalized, I guess.
Right.
But that does definitely sort of just not appear to make any sense if you watch the games.
But go ahead.
But yeah, that was all I had. I didn't know if you wanted to go any further into Alabama at all, more of just because that game was weird. I mean, there was a weather delay, so I don't know if that played a
Right. That
factor.
I think the thing is, I having been in a situation where there's been a lot of weather delays early in this season in my neck of the woods as well, just across kind of the Carolinas and there's areas here. Anytime you get a weather delay in a sport like football, it's always just so tough. And it's very difficult to judge just because it's always that thing of if there's within X amount of miles a lightning strike, there needs to be 30 minutes of no lightning, and it resets every time that goes off. I mean, that's like the age old thing in terms of lightning safety. I mean, as it should be. What I'll say is that's not necessarily totally indicative as to how that game would have gone with no interruptions. I think in Alabama's credit, but it was eyebrow raising is all I will say. That's not.
Yeah,
I'm
they
definitely giving the Tide the benefit of the doubt there, but I think I should because it's just
because we
weird when
saw
it happens.
them start with Jalen Milroe to begin the season. They lose to Texas, so then they roll out Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson. They both. I mean, they started with Buckner, I think, and then they benched him and they brought out Ty Simpson, who didn't look much better. And then now I think they have declared that it's back to Jalen Milroe this week. So yeah, it's just they don't have a quarterback. I mean, they just don't have a quarterback like Bryce or McCorkle or Tua, and they're struggling offensively because of it.
I will say this, and this is a game just since I just kind of looking as we talk and I do research and you do stuff while I look. Alabama has Ole Miss this weekend. That is a number 13 versus 15, and they play them at home. And it's a 3:30 game, your CBS game. Probably the lowest we've seen. The first time in a while that Alabama's playing this game as a more than a single digit. Lower, I should say, than a single digit. I don't know. I can see Alabama really making headlines either way this weekend because if you lose this game to Ole Miss, you can almost write Alabama off entirely this year. They're definitely not making the playoff. I just think I think that's the case anyway, because of the way they lost to Texas. But depending on what happens this weekend, a few things. You're judging how good is Alabama versus Ole Miss, and also what does the SEC race in the West really look like at that point? Because who's your favorite? Probably a relatively still, I think, with issues LSU team. I mean, I don't know. There's
I mean
there,
it's gonna. I mean it's definitely looking like it's gonna be anybody's SEC West. I mean LSU.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean Texas. I mean I said it before. I predicted Texas A&M just to sort of be different, and they lost to Miami. But I mean they could go out and beat LSU, and then it's just kind of like I mean
it comes back to what
knows?
we said. The SEC I don't think is very good this year. From the bottom down. I just don't. I think I don't even want to necessarily say other conferences are caught up to them. I just think it's a down year. But people put a lot of stake in playing the SEC teams as they should. And and not only that, dude, the Alabama not being in the conversation by like week 4 is really weird to me. It's got to be for you too. I mean, that's what they're teetering on the brink of. They're teetering on the brink of irrelevancy in terms of what their fans expect for the rest of the season. And that's just really weird to me.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I mean I think it'll be fun and interesting if we get Alabama versus Clemson in the Pop-Tart Bowl. That'll be...
Hey, now back up. Pop-Tarts would be a cool name for a bowl game. In a year,
there is a Pop-Tart Bowl.
Oh, there is? All right.
Yeah, it's in Orlando. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Didn't
know that.
I just pulled it up because I was trying to find it. I think it used to be the I don't know what it used to be, but yeah, it's I think it's new. It's I don't know if it replaced the Cheez-It or what, but yeah.
Yeah, insert food item here, right? That's all I got as far as sports goes. The last thing we
it replaced the Cheez-It Bowl.
Cool. Last thing we got to talk about is Ahsoka, because we always bring you the best of both in terms of popular culture, and right now Casen and I have stuck to early football and Ahsoka reviews per week. I even had
Yeah.
someone tell me last week, Casen, that they had a very great another great cast, but they had to stop before the Ahsoka spoilers. So and that's all the show is now. It's just spoilers with what's
Pretty much.
with what's
Yeah.
going
I mean,
on. So we
because
got to.
you can't really talk about it otherwise. Yeah.
No, you can't. I will say that this. So spoiler warning, kind of goes without saying. This week's episode was probably my favorite so far. Like last week's was, this week I felt a lot better about in terms of moving the plot forward, which was my biggest criticism last week. Yeah, the Anakin stuff was cool. It blew up the internet and all that stuff, Hayden Christensen, but it's like we didn't move the plot forward until literally the last 5 minutes. All of this episode moved the plot forward to me.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of people sort of didn't even think we were going to get what we got. Like, I think the predictions were that we weren't really going to see Thrawn to the end of this episode, and they didn't even think we were going to see Ezra at all. And here we are at the end of episode 6 with 2 episodes left, and we basically know where we're going. Like, we know Ahsoka's coming. They're gonna be hunting her, and then we're gonna basically having to stop them from getting out. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely really awesome to see Thrawn in live action. That was great. I don't know what your thoughts on the character are, but
I'll be honest, that single scene where he is walking up and it's like they're chanting his name. I thought that was one of the coolest entrances in a Star Wars or Disney product to because we've heard about. I also think that they concealed him long enough. It was sort of like this ominous idea of like, you've heard about him. And honestly, as someone who's not even like, who again is not a fan of Rebels, has not seen Rebels or the Clone Wars, I thought his reveal really did speak to volumes of, we've heard that this guy's a problem. And then you see all those messed up old like stormtroopers suits. And then you just hear, like I said, they almost like are chanting his name, like the Thrawn as he walks out. I was like, okay, that was a really cool entrance. And then I felt who the actor, you might be able to tell me the name. I know it's the last name of Mikkelsen.
Lars
Mikkelsen. That's who it is. Very cool presence on screen. I'm like, he looks menacing. He seems like a strategist, and he seems like the kind of guy who sort of like Krennic in those other, not Krennic, Grand Admiral Tarkin. I'm thinking of like, they seem very ruthless, and it's like, I will end you with impunity if it means protecting the Empire. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's cut from that cloth, 100%. Very spooky individual.
The great thing is he did the voice acting for Thrawn in Rebels.
Oh,
and
he
so
did. He was another one of those. That's great.
Yeah. So he's been the character for years, and so he definitely knows how to deliver lines, which is why it's like, if you were watching it and closed your eyes, it'd be like the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it's great to see. I mean, I think definitely he's an interesting character because the whole thing is like, he was a Grand Admiral in the Empire, but like, it almost feels like an eye, like an eye over the team situation where it's all about him and not the Empire. Yeah. If that makes sense. It was almost more of like he was playing for the name on the back of the jersey. Which is why he has
I like
people
that,
like chanting his name or whatever. But
but I do like the mentality of like, I'm a problem by myself. Okay, to the point where almost has like the aspirations of being the dictator of the new empire himself.
Yeah, exactly. Which was like he was one of those dudes that like, definitely, if I had to like equate it to something, he was in it because he liked what Palpatine and Vader stood for, but he was like, I don't like any of that Sith stuff. I just like to
I like the power,
dictator.
like the power end of it.
He's in it for the power and the control.
Shifting ahead, I thought this was a very strong Sabine episode. I thought this was cool to see them actually. It's like, oh, she's actually on her own in the wasteland kind of thing. I'm a big fan of the Fallout video game series. It's my favorite video game series of all time. So it gave me Fallout vibes of, okay, you point me in a direction, I'm gonna either find what I'm looking for or just be lost to the wastes. And gave me those vibes for sure. Also gave me that, okay, this is a really cliche trope of, are we really going to let her go? Like, you're this masterful tactician. And then Thrawn's like, no, you're going to tail her. And if she finds, Ezra Bridges, is it Bridger?
Bridger, yeah.
Thank you. No, you're going to take them both out. And I'm like, okay, that's more like what I'd expect from you. I was like, if I was writing this, that's more kind of what I would expect the objective to be. I do got to ask you a question. When Ezra came around, how did you think that was going to go? I thought like that he would be the last scene of the thing and of the episode, and they cut to credits.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I was honestly a little stunned that we got like 5 minutes of conversation with them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of jokes on Twitter this morning and last night about Ezra when he finds out how Sabine got this.
Yeah. He's
gonna be so mad.
He's not gonna be happy. But also there was that really well written line of she kind of refuses to say how she got there at first, and then it's like, can I just
right.
Yeah, like she's literally like, can I just enjoy the fact that I found you for like a bit?
But he's gonna find out, and he's gonna be very mad.
But then he literally says, I can't wait to go home. And he walks away, and Sabine kind of gives this look towards the camera of like, I like, even without knowing what might be on the horizon with Thrawn's return, it's sort of like this was kind of, if you're her, from her perspective, this was a one-way trip. I was either going to find him and that's it. And it's almost like, okay, at that point, you have to tell him right now how you got there, because it's kind of like Ezra, we ain't going home, probably. Like, from her perspective, obviously Ahsoka's on the way, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, man, if this was from her perspective, it's like, yeah, this is kind of it, dude. Like,
that's very true, and that she doesn't know. So they're gonna have to shift their focus to trying to stop Thrawn from leaving. So I would imagine that's going to be involve taking out the destroyer and things like that.
Barring Ezra is aware that Thrawn's it's still alive and is about to do this. So you would know that better than me. I mean, I don't know. It's Rebels.
Well, yeah. So I mean, like I said last time, I'm very curious to see if we ever find out what happened, because when we left them, like, Thrawn was like basically like he was tied up basically by the space whales, and Ezra like basically had him held hostage. And so I'm really curious as to where we got from there to, oh, here we are, Ezra's in hiding because Thrawn has a full army again.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean, I would imagine maybe it's just the stormtroopers came in and like overpowered Ezra and he escaped. But,
I have a question for you, Casen. How long has it been since the end of Rebels and the beginning of this show?
I don't know for sure if we have an actual definitive time, but I think, judging by like context clues over, like, it takes place somewhere in like the middle of, like, we know it takes place after the season 2 of Mando, because Morgan Elsbeth is in it, and that's usually somewhere around 5 to 10. So I would imagine it's anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Got it. That definitely doesn't seem like long enough, but it's somewhere around there, I think.
Well, Ezra had enough time to grow a beard and stuff.
And look like an adult, because in the show, he was definitely, he was still depicted as a kid. And so now he looks like full on like an adult now.
The last thing I wanted to mention about the episode is I liked the aliens that he was hanging out with. They reminded me They reminded me of grunts from the Halo series, from the Halo sagas.
Yes, absolutely.
They looked and sounded exactly like the grunts. They looked and sounded exactly like them. So much so to the point where I'm like, Bungie's going to be on the phone to you guys and say, "Hey, look, give us a cut, since you seriously lifted literally things that we made." I mean, it was like a 1-to-1 for me. I was like, "That's a grunt. That's a grunt from Halo."
Yeah.
But that's what I thought of anyway.
That definitely, I was trying to think of like why they seemed so familiar. That's a great pull.
If you've played the original Halo trilogy, you've seen what those things are basically at some point. It's not a 1-to-1, but it's pretty close.
But they definitely like gave off the same vibe, and it was very funny.
Yeah, and it was nice to see these things, and it's like, oh, they're cool. They're like friendly. But that's all I got, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts over the Night Sisters, the witches?
Thought that was cool. I think that Star Wars, journeying into the idea of the mythicism is interesting. It plants seeds for where I know the sequel trilogy, barring it stays completely canon, could be going with like the spooky Sith cultists and things like that. It's possible for me to believe that witches could exist in another galaxy, right? Next to ours. So
well,
and they're
so
ancient.
I think I think what maybe didn't really get explained. So from what I can gather based on what she said and what I know, that her people are from this planet,
Mm-hmm.
and then they ended up going to Dathomir, and that's where they settled and planted their home in the Star Wars galaxy. And Dathomir is where Darth Maul is from. And you go to Dathomir in the Fallen Order video game. There's a huge section
That's
in
right.
Dathomir, which is great time there. But yeah, so it's a really interesting sort of dynamic, because you have basically the equivalent of Force users with these witches, and so they can kind of like fight each other. And yeah, I think the only thing else to add would be they're planting seeds over what Balin is doing, because there was a lot of really good conversation with Balin and the girl, his apprentice, over like what his intentions are and motivations are. And, and he like talks about the stories that he learned, which is a very interesting like sort of tie-in, because we saw Ahsoka talking about them when they were in the whale, and then like 10 minutes later we heard him talk about the same stories. And so
That's true.
Very interesting sort of just tie-in over like saying these two really started in the same place, and like they're on two different opposite sides here because of the outcome of this war.
Yeah, they've really made Balin a really interesting character in this, and I think he's going to have a decent role to play in whatever Filoni's setting up for this movie.
Yeah, well, because he talks about, well, he's saying that he's there to find something bigger.
Yeah,
and there's going to be some temple. I think we're going to see him in these next two episodes. Him and his apprentice go try and find some temple of this mystical art that he was heard about in these stories.
He also, and this is just the last thing that you jog my memory on, he also essentially implies that, I like the line where he's like, I'm here to break the cycle.
Yeah,
empires rise and fall, the conflict happens, and that's all that Star Wars has been. But there's some obviously historical context in our own life and universe and society, right? That inspires all of this art. My thing is, I like the idea of, he's not really like, he's a dark side user, yeah, but he's not really a Sith. He definitely parted ways with a Jedi. He has other motivations, and I just think that it's interesting of like, if I can cut this off before it is, it's like, I will do bad things for a greater good kind of vibes. I don't know.
That's what's so upsetting about the actor's passing, is that like,
yeah, that's true. That's right.
His character has been so interesting, and he's been such a like, we haven't really seen much of many characters like that. I mean, Ahsoka herself was like that in the Clone Wars, where she was sort of like, I don't like what's going on here, a ton. But as far as like somebody on the other side too, he's just like, this is not what this is supposed to be doing. And I learned what what the order was supposed to be, and I still believe in what it stood for, but that's not what it was.
Yeah, and I completely forgot about that. Yeah, Ray Stevenson passed away.
So
yeah,
I think we could have gone to many other interesting other projects with him, exploring some other weird storylines that could have been entertaining.
But hey, with all due respect, it doesn't mean that his character in writing won't inspire a similar character that we could.
Yeah, maybe his apprentice can continue sort of that mindset, and we can get a really interesting sort of dynamic. Because she has definitely like really interesting chemistry with Sabine, and so maybe we'll have them two kind of go back and forth in some future stuff.
Maybe
because that'd be interesting. So
would be
we'll see. I hope we get some really like wild, like mystical lore stuff in these next couple episodes about that.
I think so. And the last thing I'll say is Filoni, a lot of people I saw saying that if episode 5 was for the Clone Wars fans, episode 6 was for the Rebels fans. I thought that was a good dynamic. And I will say that this show has got me to the point where I am genuinely looking forward to the conclusion. It's still not like, my absolute favorite Star Wars content or anything, but I like that episode because, again, the plot moved forward, and I hate to say this, Ahsoka was literally not in it. Was in the episode. It was my favorite, basically, character in this, Sabine, one of them, interacting and doing stuff, but it wasn't any of Ahsoka, the very boring title character of this show.
Yeah, I think that will definitely probably go down as like one of the biggest mistakes was just literally naming it Ahsoka, because like no one I think would really like if you had just walked into this knowing it was going to be like a Rebels live action project or whatever, it would have been a very different thing. It's just you walked into it expecting it to be Ahsoka, and like it's like undeniably not, because it's not in half the episodes.
Exactly. Like, so criticism where it's due, but my tone on the things that I'm critical about have not changed. The things that I'm liking have gotten better. So that's all I got, dude. That's all I got. This has been we've talked a bunch again. We've gone to the gridiron. We've gone to a galaxy far, far away, and now it's time to go to the next stop, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. I really appreciate it, especially this week, because like I said, they'll be open the show. I had a lot going on today, but I've always loved to make time to put my thoughts out there to those that I know look forward to it every week, and quite frankly, speak to you, my friend.
Absolutely. Same to you.
I look forward to it every week. So until next week, this is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we'll see you, as always, at the next stop.